Hey guys, it's been a minute since I made a video. Paradox actually asked me to help with some UI feedback. Me and a small group of creators were selected. We were told that our feedback was the most helpful to the UI/UX team, and they wanted to show off some changes they've made and get some feedback. You can see here I have nearly 300 hours on Project Caesar, and at this point I no longer have access. That being said, I have some good news. EU5 is really fun. And no, I'm not just saying that. I literally wanted to play way more nations. I just didn't have time to play. To name the nations that I did try, I tried out Castile, Bohemia, Austria, Hungary, Poland, Brandenburg, the Ottomans, the Timurids, and then Colima and Puripeka, which are in Mexico. Shout out to Colima. It actually taught me way more about the building system than anything else because over there you lack certain goods. So you kind of have to figure out your own way. For example, you might want to build weaponry, but you got to figure out how to get tools and leather to do that. So it kind of like teaches you how all this stuff works in a funny way, because in Europe, a lot of times you are just kind of in the trade market and those resources are already made available to you. So you don't really have to learn that. But anyhow, I wanted to discuss a topic the community seems rather split on, and that's, should world conquest be possible? And this question is not so simple. For example, should world conquest be possible for, say, someone that starts really strong like Castile, and not possible for somebody like Ulm? Should world conquest be possible for the average player, or should it take someone of Lambda's skill? And please leave your feedback in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. My opinion doesn't really matter. I think it's more important to see what the community has to say, because I often find that my opinion doesn't align quite with what the community thinks. And to be honest, I'm okay with whatever Paradox chooses for this. I'd be fine if world conquest wasn't a super tedious thing, that's something you could kind of just achieve. I'd also be okay if it was completely impossible. When I started playing EU4, world conquest was always a goal that I strove for. It's one of those goals that the chase is more fun than the actual objective. It's kind of like, I tried so long to get world conquest, but then when you finally get there, it's kind of like leaves you feeling empty. You're like, oh, now what? So I think if world conquest was just like barely out of reach, you really had to work to kind of get there, that would be where I would want to land. Let me know what you guys think. I'm also saying that from the perspective of playing a stronger nation. For example, maybe playing a Castile, it would still be really hard to world conquest, but attainable if you played really well. Again, that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. I want to discuss another topic that I think is an interesting one to talk about, and that's the question of when, on average, should my campaign be wrapping up? Meaning, I've kind of achieved all my goals, and I'm kind of bored of the campaign. I'm by far the strongest power, and there isn't really much left as far as competition goes. Or in other words, I've reached my goals, and I'm ready to move on to a new campaign. Now, this isn't to say that you'll never play past a certain point. For example, this might drastically change if you played Castile to start versus if you played Ulm to start. So to reiterate my question, on average, what year am I ready to wrap up my campaign and try something else? And more so than dates themselves, let's talk about ages. So are you okay with your campaign ending in the Age of Reformation, the Age of Absolutism, or the Age of Revolutions? This is a question that I don't really have a good answer to, because while on paper it would be cool to play a lot of campaigns into the 1800s, I just don't know how that would feel. That could mean an average campaign takes you up to 50 hours, and with so many campaigns that you want to try, maybe that's not the landing point that you would really want it to be. Maybe you would prefer something that is something of a 20 to 30 hour campaign that ends in the Age of Absolutism. I think I tend to fall in that category, that I'm okay with campaigns ending during the Age of Absolutism. Let me know what you guys think. Again, I do think there are outliers to this. For example, I think if I played a smaller nation such as Ulm, then it would be cool to actually play into the Age of Revolutions, because maybe I haven't achieved my strength that I feel like I want to restart at that point. Or this could be a lot different. I've played, say, Castile, which, going back to that Castile versus Ulm example. Or maybe a third option, that campaigns are simply always interesting to the 1800s, which would be cool. I just don't know if it's realistic. Nor do I really know if I'd want that. It's kind of hard to know. It's talking about something that's theoretical. Of course, let me know in the comments what you guys think. And again, I'm not suggesting that every campaign you would quit during the Age of Absolutism. I'm talking about the majority of the campaigns. So of course, there's going to be outliers that you would play into the Age of Revolutions. But I just wanted to get a feel from the community of when would they be happy with their average campaign ending. For this example, let's say that you're playing a stronger nation such as the Ottomans or Castile, England, etc. On average, your campaign is probably going to end during the Age of Absolutism. Are you okay with that? Or would you like to see your average campaign end at the end date? Currently in EU4, many of you guys know, most campaigns probably only last maybe 100 to 150 years. And I'm okay with that. But that might not be the sentiment of the community. And I'm also perfectly happy with both styles. I'm not sold on one or the other. I think that both are, I'm happy to play that way, either way that it ends up landing. I want to talk about a certain scenario, and ask you guys what you think of it. Let's say that I'm playing Brandenburg and I formed Germany by the 1700s. Now, I imagine you could form Germany much sooner. And I guess that begs the other question, how fast should you be able to form Germany? However, once you form Germany, I would say your campaign is on its way out. The reason being is because you probably have a couple big enemies such as France, maybe a Commonwealth, England, etc. But if you win one war against one of those superpowers, they are going to be crippled beyond that point. Say you take Paris in the first war against France. Well, they're never really going to come back from that. So, a question to the community or even the developers, how do you navigate that issue? I'm Germany, it's 1700. I've won one war against a major power, and I've really crippled them beyond recovery. And they were kind of the end boss, they were the biggest threat remaining. So, how do you navigate the game being interesting for another 130 years from that point? Especially considering that Conquest is obviously going to be more and more advanced throughout different ages. So you're really going to be able to cripple France or whatever great power you're fighting if you beat them in simply one war. Meaning that if I formed Germany by 1700, you could assume that I probably defeated every great power within the next 20 years, and I'm ready to wrap my campaign in 1720. So just kind of a question for both the devs and the community. How do you deal with that problem? Do you make forming Germany slower? Do you make it so you can't take so much land from the great powers when you fight them? Just what are you guys' ideas as far as like how we navigate that? And I know you could self-restrict yourself, like say you go to war with France and you say, okay, I'm not going to take any land from him or something, but that's more of a role play thing, I would say. A lot of players out there aren't going to engage much in that type of role play aspect. They just want to play min-max, that sort of thing. And then there's one more topic I wanted to cover in this video, and that's how should we balance the game? Do we balance the game on the top end player, or do we balance the game on the average player, or do we balance the game on the low end player? Obviously, this is going to depend on skill level, but on average, how many hours should it take for you to achieve World Conquest? Should it be accessible your first campaign? Should you have to play the 1,000-hour tutorial first? Obviously, this is going to vary differently from player to player, but I'm kind of looking for a average. For example, I'm guessing on average, people that have played 1,000 hours in EU4 have not achieved World Conquest. Personally, I think it'd be cool if the game was balanced off of the high-end player, but that's going to be biased because I figure I'm more towards that than the average player. I'd rather that more people had fun than necessarily that my fun was reached, if that makes any sense. I'd rather that the average player was happier, and I'll be happy with wherever it lands, to be honest with you guys. Anyways, closing thoughts. You guys are going to love EU5. I have so many more campaigns that I want to try. And having played nearly 300 hours, I would say there's at least 1,000 hours of content for you guys to try, and really thousands beyond that. It's going to be a fantastic game. I'm very curious to see where the balance lands. Whereas I was given an early version, and there's just a lot of number adjustments that need to be done, some minor details. And I'm really curious to see where the devs directionally go with all of this, because they could really go whichever way they want. They could make World Conquest fairly accessible or really impossible. Just depends on their design philosophy, and I really don't know what that is. Anyhow, let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I hope you guys have a great one.